Oh, 9 o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome into day 3 of SEC Media Days. Tyler Head live from Digital Drive here at the College Football Hall of Fame. Jack and Jen, of course, back in the Columbia studios. How are things back in the Palmetto State this morning, guys?
Not too bad, honestly. It's I think we're both hurting this morning. Jen was complaining about her hip hurting, and
Oh, no.
I think my hip's hurting too, Jen. Yeah, I slept on one side last night. I'm a side sleeper, so I slept on one side last night. I guess I did not turn over all night,
Oh,
and
that'll do it.
I could feel it this morning. So
Yeah, I was trying to get to him at the door in a little extra bar 3 yesterday that kind of put me on a whack. It's like, whoa, old lady trying to move.
I too am a side sleeper, Jack, and last night I passed out right about midnight. Didn't wake up till about 6 a.m. and there was no turning for me either. So I'm maybe a little bit sore in my hip as well. So maybe all three of us are liking that today.
I'm telling you what, that's kind of pathetic if you think about it. Bless us.
We're getting old.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess so. But excited to be here for day 3 of Media Days. Plenty of things to get into. Jack, did you make it to the end of the All-Star game last night?
I did. So I watched the beginning, and then I turned it off for a little bit, put on a movie. I've been on a Christopher Reeve Superman binge lately, trying to get through all these movies that I have not seen.
The OG Superman. All right.
Well, yes, I've already seen the OG, but I got to number 4 last night, Quest for Peace. God, it was awful. So anyway, that was bad. I mean, you know. But watch the All-Star game, put it back on. The American League makes the comeback, and they tie the game 6-6. And I'm like, hold on. Let me look this up to make sure. And they got the rules that are different now, so where it's not extra innings anymore like the old days. It's changing to where it's a swing off.
So it used to be they would just tie. They wouldn't have extra innings because John Smoltz in the booth last night said, I think he said 92. He's like, yeah, I was a part of an All-Star game that tied, and in the 9th inning, they made the announcement in the stadium. I think he said they were in Milwaukee. He's like,
2002.
By the way, fans, or 2002, okay, whatever. By the way, fans, there's no extra innings. This game's getting in a tie, and people obviously didn't like that. So I loved that. I thought that was great. Kyle Schwarber coming up clutch because he had the 3 swings.
Yeah.
And, the best opportunity you could have was hit 3 home runs, and Schwarber did that to help lift the NL to what their only second All-Star win in the past 12 years, if I remember correctly. What they were saying last night. It's been dominated by the AL for a while now.
Yeah, that was awesome last night. Now, when the lineups were announced for the swing off, I'm like, I'm a Yankee fan, so I'm going to be a little bit tougher here. But the names that Aaron Boone sent out, I'm like, really? You're going to have these guys go up against Kyle Schwarber? Pete Alonso was waiting on deck, so if it was tied, he would have won it. I mean, it's just like, what? What are we thinking here? And I get it because a lot of the starters, like Aaron Judge and others, were already gone. Like, they take their planes and they go on their vacations and stuff to get family time. I get that. So you don't have them there. But it was entertaining. I really enjoyed it. Great All-Star game and a great finish.
Yeah, Aaron Judge, Freddie Freeman, probably Cal Raleigh, all those guys were probably not even in the state of Georgia at that point in time when he got that late in the going.
Yeah, so but very entertaining game 2 last night. Just a nice comeback. The AL was down 6-0 in this game, and came all the way back, which is pretty cool.
I haven't perused social media or anything today. The internet's being kind of slow here. Hopefully everybody's good with us watching on the live stream. But I can guarantee you, Jack, there's at least one person out there writing a story today, if they've not already written it, about how we should do the swing off in every single game instead of extra innings. I can almost promise you somebody is going with that take this morning.
And I'll second that. I love it. I think it's something that, look, the extra innings is already kind of a joke with the Ghost Runner and stuff. I'm not a big fan of the Ghost Runner. I kind of just like the way it was before, where it's just clean inning, just like normal, just like you would have in the postseason. But I think a swing off was very entertaining last night. That would be a cool way to decide a game.
I think, I don't know, maybe not go to it directly. And I don't really have a problem with the runner on second. I do think it has kind of sped up extra innings a little bit there, especially, with trying to speed up the game as a whole overall. Like maybe if you get to like a 12th inning. So all right, we've already played 3 extra innings. Now maybe you go to something like a swing off. You know what I mean? Like maybe that's an option just to prevent these games from getting so crazy long like extra innings can sometimes. But I wouldn't want to scrap extra innings completely.
No, like I think you need to keep it for a few innings, but kind of like what the NHL does, of where all right, they're going to do the 5-minute overtime, and then they'll go into a sudden death shootout. I think that's
exactly just like that.
I think that's something that could be good. And how often do games even go to the 12th inning? It does not happen too frequently anymore. Usually, I was going to say, just because the ghost runner on second was meant to eliminate these longer games that would go 18, 19, 20 innings. They've cut down on that significantly.
Yeah, but instead of, a 13th and 14th inning, if you want to do a swing off, I think that'd be fine. And again, the fans seemed to love it last night. It was exciting to watch. And I enjoyed it. So a fun All-Star game all around. And again, one of the many, many things going on in Atlanta this week, in addition to Beyonce, in addition to all the WWE stuff going on in town. And of course, media days, we roll along for day number 3 here.
Yeah, very fun. And I'm sure Atlanta will be a little less packed now that there's no All-Star game. There's no Beyonce. Yep. WWE's off too now, right? I mean,
they were just here over the weekend.
Yeah, so I can't imagine, unless there's something else random going on, which I'm sure there is.
There's probably some other convention or something in town that I'm not aware of, because those kind of things just always happen here. But traffic not too bad this morning getting in, and hopefully stays that way this afternoon and tomorrow as well. We'll dive back into Media Day stuff in just a second, but Jen, hit that sandstorm pick me up for me, please. It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick Me Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all 9s. Yesterday was kind of a rare instance for media days, where we had 4 teams speaking in Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, and I'm blanking. Who else spoke yesterday? Auburn, and none of those teams are on South Carolina's schedule, and especially for Georgia and Tennessee. I talked to some of my buddies in Athens yesterday, did a radio hit with them before I went on the air yesterday morning, and they were even saying, hey, it's still weird that South Carolina and Georgia don't see each other for now the second year in a row. I'm assuming you're going to see the Dogs and you're going to see the Volunteers coming up in 2026. But even all that's still up in the air with what we're going to do with the schedule and the playoff and all those kind of things. So 2 teams that for the longest time were regulars on South Carolina's schedule. Once again, not the case this year.
Yeah, and I know folks love seeing these rivalries and stuff, and I know they love seeing South Carolina play Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, etc. But also, and I think South Carolina could be competitive in some of these games, but let's be real. We're talking about games that South Carolina more often than not loses. And I like that the schedule does kind of change a little bit, right? It's very different. Now, I think we should have some of these games become rivalries again. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't weird not having some of these games on the schedule and whatnot, or South Carolina making the trip to Sanford Stadium or Rocky Top, whatever. But I think maybe integrating it back kind of slowly over the next few years would be good. But I think I'm also okay with it not being on the schedule every single year, just because South Carolina has not played particularly well in these games in the last few years.
Despite none of those opponents being on the schedule for South Carolina, anything in particular stick out to what you heard or saw or read from day 2 yesterday?
Well, I meant to mention this last night. I totally blanked on me, but hearing Jackson Arnold, who's now the quarterback at Auburn, was obviously at Oklahoma last year and stuff. And, I saw, I think on like TikTok and on Twitter or whatever. He was talking about his welcome to the SEC moment. And it was the game against South Carolina, ironically, where he had the 8 sacks that he took. I didn't realize the following week against Ole Miss, he also took 8 more sacks. So very, very crazy for him. And that was funny to hear yesterday for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And again, speaking of Jackson Arnold, talking about Auburn yesterday, I think one thing that's going to be really interesting is to see how long the leash is for a guy like him, because it's a make or break year for Hugh Freeze, for being honest. He's got to go out there, he's got to win and do better than they've been doing these past couple of years to get people off his back out there in Auburn. And I do wonder, because Jackson Arnold, he admitted it yesterday as well. He was bad at Oklahoma. And I think we put more maybe on what was happening around him, poor offensive line, didn't have a good help at receiver and all that kind of stuff that, maybe it wasn't all his fault. But let's say he goes out there and he is bad again this year. Like, how long do you let him go before you pull the plug and say, you know what, we got Deuce Knight waiting in the wings. Let's go ahead and put him out there and see what we can do with him. And at that point, maybe the Jackson Arnold experiment, at least Power 5 level, would be over.
I was just about to say, I mean, you have Deuce Knight, a 5-star recruit, waiting in the wings. So it's like, it gets to a point here where, if he's not playing well, I mean, I was writing a story about what Arnold said yesterday about the welcome to the SEC moment. He got benched September 21st last year against Tennessee. So that was only like 5 weeks into the season. And so he gets benched then. I mean, if he's playing poorly enough, and like Auburn fans are going to let it be known that they want Deuce Knight if things are not going well. Like, I know you brought this guy in. I know, the money is what you have for, bringing in a guy like Arnold and stuff. So you want to see it through with him. But if he's not playing well, I would almost be certain that Deuce Knight would have to get some sort of opportunity just because, I mean, Auburn in general, this is kind of a make or break year just in general, just because this is now year 3 under Hugh Freeze. Got to be better this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, he's somebody that is under a lot of fire right now for the way that they're recruiting, and he did defend his golf game yesterday as well. And I think they're all waiting until August when you can have those guaranteed contracts with players or with the next crop of recruits via revenue sharing to really get an influx of talent. And if that doesn't happen, I'd be really interested to see how they handle that on the Plains when we get closer to the start of the season. But some of the big dogs, or the two biggest dogs in the SEC, being Texas and Georgia, speaking yesterday. We'll dive into what Coach Sark and Arch Manning had to say coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head live from Digital Drive here at SEC Media Day number 3. Jack Belcher and Jen Jensen back in the studios there in Columbia here on your Wednesday on the Game. And welcome back in. It is the Extra Point live from Digital Drive here at SEC Media Days. Tyler Head in Atlanta. I want to thank all of our great sponsors that are allowing us to be here this week, including Lawyer Lisa. If you need to talk estate planning, elder law, elder care, or probate, call Lawyer Lisa at 803-563-5163. Go to lawyerlisa.com. Jack, I mentioned yesterday, we had the heavy hitters here yesterday talking in Georgia and Texas, the two teams that obviously played for the conference championship a year ago. Georgia coming out on top, but Texas obviously able to get the furthest in the playoff, making it in the semifinals, and we're perhaps one fumble away from maybe punching their ticket going back to the national championship game. And, they really bucked the trend a year ago of what I think a lot of people thought they were capable of, because I think everybody looked and said, well, yeah, you're at the top of the Big 12, but this is the SEC, and it's going to be a different ball game. And tip of the cap to them and Sark, because they came in and showed that they had the ability to compete right away. Now, yes, their schedule was easier than a lot of other teams' schedules on the slate, but nevertheless, they still, again, got farther than anybody else did when it came to the college football playoff.
Yeah, they didn't really skip a beat last year. I think that they were far better than, seasons past, especially when they were in the Big 12. Like, this was, I think, one of the top teams in the SEC for sure. And, it's going to be a different looking team this year. Obviously, Arch Manning will be under center for Texas. No more Quinn Ewers. And I think that's a good thing for Texas. Quinn is a good quarterback and all, but struggled a little bit, I would say, last year with the 12 interceptions and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to seeing the Arch Manning show. I haven't been super, super high on him, not because I don't think he's a good player. I think he's a great player. I think he's going to be excellent. But in terms of all these ranking lists and stuff and seeing him number one on a lot of them, it's questionable. And even he was saying the same thing in media days yesterday, like the fact that he hasn't earned it yet. He needs to go out there and do it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this team looks like under him.
We'll get to some Arch Manning here in just a second, but I do think it was funny that I don't know, maybe somebody that's an Aggie was at the controls yesterday, but when Sark did walk up, they played the Aggie Battle War Hymn instead of Texas fight song as he was walking up to the stage.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. That was that was something that I was not expecting to see, and it was something that you need to go back and watch. I mean, if you haven't seen it, it was so funny yesterday.
All right, let's get a little bit of Arch Manning here. Cut number 39, Jen, as Jack mentioned a moment ago. Arch Manning, he hears all the hype, but he also understands he has to go out there and prove himself this season as well.
I'm not really sure how they get these opinions because I've only played 2 games, but I guess that's nice of them to say. But that doesn't mean anything. Talk is cheap. I got to go prove it.
I mean, he sounds like all of us when talking about Manning, and again, he's not the one that's putting it out there, right? And his name being what it is certainly adds a lot of cachet to the hype that goes around. Tim, I've said many times his name's Arch Smith. Yeah, we talk about him because he was a 5-star, but not nearly as much as we talk about him because his last name is Manning. He comes from perhaps the most famous family in the history of football, certainly when you're talking about quarterbacks. But I like that answer because he's like, hey, yeah, I've only started 2 games. I still got to go out there and actually prove myself. So he understands that he's still got to go out there and show people that he is worth that billing that he's being put up against.
Like he said, when people were asking him yesterday, he's just one of the guys, right? And that's how he wants to be treated, right? And we know he's got the famous last name and stuff, and he comes from a quarterback family and all that. And he's going to be, and just take the name out of it. He's going to be a really fun quarterback, I think, to watch this year. We're talking about a guy that could easily just be picked in the top 5 in the NFL draft next year, not for his last name, but for his talent on the field. So I kind of, like the answer he gave there of like, yeah, I have not earned it yet because, yeah, he's only started in a few games. And, this was Quinn's team for the last few years here. And he was a very good quarterback. Let's not forget 2 years ago when Arch was a freshman and Quinn narrowly missed out on getting Texas to the national championship when they lost in that Sugar Bowl to Washington. I mean, Quinn was at his best back then, I think. And obviously last year, a little bit not as good as it was before, but still, I think it's a good time for Arch to become that quarterback.
And I'm a believer that 2 things can be true at the same time. Arch Manning can have a really, really good season and still not live up to all the hype and expectation. Like, he may not win the Heisman Trophy. Texas may not win the national championship. He may not be the number 1 overall pick, but he can still have a very solid year and not do any of those things.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And I think the expectations for him, for a lot of people, are okay, get Texas to a national championship and win the Heisman. And if those things don't happen, a lot of people are going to view this as a failure. And again, they're going to be more critical because of the last name and stuff. But like, I think he's going to do well this year. I don't know about winning the Heisman. I think there are a lot of other good quarterbacks out there in this league. And I think he's good enough to help Texas win a national championship. But if he falls short of those expectations, I mean, the numbers will probably still say he had a great year. So we'll see what happens. But I think the expectations are very high for him, almost too high in a lot of ways.
Let's shift this over to Coach Sarkisian. Cut number 36 here, Jen. This is him talking about avoiding complacency as they enter their second year in the SEC.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line there of what does complacency look like, of monitoring it. And I watch the intent of our players. I watch the way they work. I watch the way they interact with one another. I watch the way they compete with one another. And so I don't feel complacency whatsoever amongst our players. But what I do know about our team, I think about Anthony Hill was a state champion in high school. Colin Simmons was a state champion in high school. Michael Taft was a state champion in high school. Trey Wisner was a state champion in high school. And I could keep going down the list. We've got winners in our locker room. And we specifically and intentionally recruited winners into our locker room. So when these guys are going into a locker room after a loss in the semifinals, I promise you it hurts them. And so we don't forget that feeling. Okay, and so we're back to work, and the leadership on this team is full of winners, and that's the way they want to go about this season, is try to go win a championship. That's the goal.
And again, I think Texas overachieved in a lot of lines in year one in the SEC, but you can't deny right now they're kind of stuck on this semifinal hump. They got there 2 seasons ago and came up short against Washington in the Sugar Bowl, and obviously last year playing in I guess that was the Cotton Bowl, with the opportunity to drive down and win the game against Ohio State. You have the questionable play call that leads to the fumble that obviously helped Ohio State seal that game and go on to win the national championship. And look, I don't know if Texas goes out there and beats Notre Dame in the national championship. If they get that matchup, I would lean towards that probably happening. So there's a lot of what could have been and a lot of, people in Texas hoping that this is the year they can finally put it all together. But again, as we talk about with the playoff field being as deep it is and how many games you have to go through, winning possibly 4 games in a row once again over the course of that month is a tall task for anybody.
Yeah, it's a grind. I mean, we saw it last year with the teams that were able to get that far, with Ohio State, winning it all. I think it's something where, it's 4 games. You really need the right matchups, right? And you could argue Texas should have lost in the second round to Arizona State. I think that's something that that you definitely could argue that would have been the case. And they had a good game against Clemson stuff. They got the favorable matchups in that way. But when it came to that Ohio State game, it was tough. And speaking of Ohio State, they're going to get Ohio State week 1 in the Horseshoe on August 30th. If they can get through that game, I don't think they lose again or, have an opportunity to potentially have one of those toss-up games until you get to at Georgia November 15th. And if you can get through that game, the only one left standing after that, and it's the rivalry game at the end of the year, the Lone Star Showdown with Texas A&M. This should be a team that I know the SEC is competitive and all, and it was tough last year with so much parity. But I think Texas, if everything goes right, they should be undefeated at the end of the year.
Well, in that Ohio State game, it almost kind of serves as a mulligan, right? Because as long as you don't get blown out by 40 points in that game or something along those lines, as long as you're competitive and it's close, even if you lose that game, I really don't feel like it's going to count against you because we anticipate, once again, Ohio State is probably going to be undefeated or a one-loss team or something in the realm of making the playoff themselves. So I feel like that game really doesn't necessarily hurt the loser unless they go out there and just get steamrolled.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And again, the difference now with the playoff and stuff is that one loss does not kill you. I mean, it would not be good to have a 40-point loss on your resume, but it's week 1, and you can lose multiple games and still make the playoffs, as we all know.
Well, and you can lose that game. You can lose another game in conference, still be 10-2 with only 1 conference loss, and that guarantees you a spot in the SEC championship game, more likely than not. So, yeah, Texas, I think they're going to be fine no matter what happens in week number 1, but that at least allows us to kind of set the tone and the expectations based on what we see out of Arch Manning, what we see out of this team that has lost a lot of talent to the NFL, once again, and kind of going from there and what they're going to be in year number 2 in the SEC.
Yeah, this will be a very interesting team to watch this year, and it'll be interesting to see if they miss the national championship this year. What does that look like, and how will we view the expectations at the end of the year if that were the case? But we'll see.
Well, the other team that made and won the SEC championship game a year ago was Georgia Bulldogs. Kirby Smart and his team talking yesterday. We'll dive into what they had to say coming up next as the X Point rolls along. Tyler Head live from Digital Drive here at SEC Media Day number 3 on the game. Tyler Head here for our friends over at Twin Peaks, right down the street in Columbia in the Vista. I've been telling you about it all week long, but I remind you once again, the Bikini Week costume party is ongoing right now. Last 2 days, today and tomorrow, to get down to the lodge and experience all the fun down there, including specials on your favorite summer beverages, including those 29-degree draft beers. To keep you cool, refreshing cocktails and cheap shots, bring the crew and grab watermelon margarita topped with watermelon Red Bull or Paloma to beat the heat. But it doesn't stop there, because there's never a bad time to be at Twin Peaks. Take in tons of amazing sports action with TVs as far as the eye can see. Tons and tons of delicious food. And as I just mentioned a moment ago, of course, those 29-degree draft beers. Get yourself down to Twin Peaks this weekend, tomorrow, or whenever you can. Hang out with our friends right down the street in the Vista. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. We are live at SEC Media Days, day number 3, hanging out on Digital Drive here. Kalen DeBoer in the main ballroom area, or Peach Bowl field, whatever you want to call it, down below. Talking right now about the Alabama Crimson Tide. We'll certainly work them into the conversation as the day goes along, and certainly tomorrow as well, as we'll have some of that sound for you coming up later. As that's a team that South Carolina is going to be seeing coming up in Williams-Brice Stadium this October in the homecoming game, which is going to be huge and should be a nice raucous environment as they look to knock off Alabama for the first time in a very, very long time. Jack, what grade were you in the fall of 2010?
Oh gosh, I want to say I was in 5th grade when South Carolina last beat Alabama.
Wow, I was a freshman in high school that year.
Yeah, and to put into perspective, I hadn't even moved to South Carolina yet.
You were still in New York.
I was still in New York. So
wow,
we're talking about like it's 15 years now, which is crazy to even think about. I mean, it's I think this would be a good year to see South Carolina finally do it and knock off Alabama. And what I hope is a night game. I hope that is a night game and should be a lot of fun.
Now, do they rush the field if they beat them, regardless of what they're ranked?
No. South Carolina is at the point now where unless they're like 0-7 by that point or whatever, like they're struggling, they're awful this year. This should be a team that does not need to storm the field at all this year, but you never know. I mean, I know students don't care about that stuff and they'll just storm the field whenever. So,
well, hopefully that'd be a good problem to have. We have to have that discussion coming away from that game. So we'll see what happens. That game coming up in the middle of October. Again, not going to see Georgia on the schedule this year. Still weird considering how many years consecutively played them as opponents in the SEC East. But Kirby Smart and his team were here talking yesterday, and want to start off with cut number 9 here, Jen. Kirby Smart, one of the most important things I think that he said yesterday was talking about how young his team is. Cut number 9, Jen, this is him talking about his young group of players.
Yeah, I do sense in our practices and our workouts and the things we've been able to be a part of in the spring, there is a youthful exuberance. There is a, that can be positive and negative. I can sit up here last year and tell you how experienced we were. We had all these guys coming back. They played a lot of football. But are they motivated and are they really wanting to be great as opposed to something when it's new, there's a lot more excitement. It's their first time getting a chance to start. It's their first time being a major player in the rotation. So there's good and bad about both. We got to manage that. We got to be patient with them and we got to get them better.
And the stat that I brought up yesterday that really stuck out to me was him mentioning that 54% of the Georgia roster this year is either comprised of first or second-year players. And when you think about Georgia, and especially at the height of their dominance a couple of seasons ago, they were 3-4 deep at just about every single spot. And it seemed like every guy that was starting was a junior or a senior, somebody that had waited their turn, that was going to go on and play in the NFL the next upcoming year. And that's not necessarily the case this time around. And I don't know if that's a vulnerability or not, but you certainly have to get guys up to speed a lot quicker, though he did mention yesterday, and he made a really good point in this, that you can't speed up development. Guys are going to come along however fast they're going to come along, and you just have to hope that what you're putting in them with practice and all that kind of stuff brings out the best in them when it's time for their number to be called.
Yeah, I think this might be a Georgia team that flies a little bit under the radar, I would say. Like, gets a little bit lowballed by some teams out there, or not teams, but, in preseason polls and stuff where they may not be the top dog in this conference. Not with Texas in there and stuff. And, I mean, I think I'd probably feel the same way just because they have to replace so much. And how's Gunnar Stockton going to look? I think that's probably the number one question this year because obviously, as we all know, a lot of team success does fall on the quarterback's shoulders. And I think we do need to see more out of Stockton this season for Georgia to have the year that they want to have.
Yeah, he's still relatively improving. It's actually kind of funny because I think you can kind of put him and Arch Manning in that same kind of category as Manning got to start 2 games last year and obviously played situationally throughout the season as well. But Gunnar Stockton finally got his number called, at halftime in the SEC championship game after Carson Beck, injured his hand, came in and played a really gritty and tough second half to help lead Georgia to that victory, and then started the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame. And look, that was not the best game for Georgia by any means. I don't put a lot of that on Gunnar Stockton's shoulders necessarily because I think his team let him down. The offense had trouble slowing down Notre Dame. His offensive line wasn't blocking well for him. His receivers couldn't catch the ball very well. So I think we still haven't seen Gunnar Stockton play up to his full potential because the pieces around him weren't always firing on all cylinders in those 6 quarters that we did see out of him. So if he can get decent help around him, I mean, he could take off and be an exceptional quarterback this year. We'll just have to wait and see.
That's all you need. You just need that one guy who could be like that safety blanket for you that you can always rely on at receiver. And also having a good running back would also help, and a good offensive line. But I think Georgia's going to be fine this year. I think they're going to be right in the thick of things. I just don't think I view them personally as a national championship winning team this season. I think they'll get to the playoff and stuff and compete for one, but I don't think they're going to be one of those last teams standing at the end.
Yeah, and again, I'm a Georgia alum, so this is me saying this, that, you know, I don't look at their roster and I don't put it quite in the same category as like in Ohio State, same category as a Texas. As of right now, they still got plenty of good players, still got plenty of good guys that are capable of going to the NFL, but I don't know if top to bottom they're as loaded as they've been in years past, and I could be wrong about that, and we get halfway through the season and say, wow, these guys that we didn't know as much about went out there and are balling out and playing exceptionally well, but it's kind of one of those things we'll have to certainly wait and see if and when that that does end up happening there.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a team that, again, I think they will surprise us in a lot of ways. Just because they're replacing 54% of their roster does not mean that they won't be good. I mean, they will be probably fine. I mean, they have tough road games early on in the year, going to Tennessee and going to Auburn, but sure. I mean, if they handle those games, still got Alabama and stuff, still got Ole Miss, but I think, and Texas, I think this is a team that could be fine if they handle those road games.
And that's one area that I think does benefit them this year. That if you remember when Georgia won the SEC championship last year, and Kirby took the microphone, hit next to Greg Sankey, no less. He said, "Yeah, you know, Sankey's been sending us on the road this year because they had to go to Texas, they had to go to Alabama, had to go to Ole Miss, and obviously lost 2 out of those 3 games in the regular season. So now with the schedule being the way that it is, you get all those games at home now. So you're going to have Texas coming into Sanford Stadium. Same thing with Alabama. Same thing with Ole Miss. And those are probably still going to be 3 of the tougher games on Georgia's schedule, but you feel a whole lot more comfortable playing them in your own home than having to go in those raucous environments and having to pull out a win that way.
Yeah, if you're able to kind of flip what happened last year with losing those games at Ole Miss, at Alabama, you win those games this year, you could probably afford to lose a game or 2 on the road, whether it's Tennessee or Auburn. Early on in the year, I think they'll be fine probably splitting those games. They probably honestly will probably win both games. So, I mean, this team, they have the potential to go out there and win 10 games or more. Again, it's just going to fall on,
Georgia, last year was considered a down year for Georgia, obviously, because they didn't go to the national championship, didn't even make the semifinals. But, you know, it's really funny in hindsight for again, somebody like myself that is very familiar with the Georgia fan base. If you would have told people in Athens 10 years ago, hey, in 2024, you're going to be disappointed with the year that you won the SEC championship and were a part of the college football playoff, they wouldn't have believed you. But the standard there has gotten so high that just winning the conference championship isn't the accomplishment, to them at least, that it used to be.
This is what happens when you become one of the big brand names in college football, where you're winning national championships year after year. I mean, Georgia's won 2 titles so far in the 2020s, and you'd expect them to continue to be dominant. So for us to be talking about them as maybe not the most dominant team in this conference is a little bit jarring, because it's just like you come to expect Georgia to be that team defensively. They always have a good quarterback, but this year, a lot of unknowns. But I'm interested to see how they'll do this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So they'll kick things off. Week number 1. I think is it Marshall?
Yep,
they have this year.
Marshall number 1.
Yeah,
week number
Marshall
1.
week 1. So not with a tough opponent right out of the gate, but again, that schedule is certainly daunting once you get into conference play, and we'll see how they fare. On the other end of the spectrum, though, you have the Auburn Tigers, who are just looking to keep their head above water. We'll get into what Hugh Freeze had to say yesterday as the extra point rolls along. Tyler Head live from Atlanta. Jack Veltri back in Columbia here on your Wednesday, day 3 of SC Media Days on the Game. You got that cut. All right, welcome back in. It is the extra point. I'll call for it. It's all right. It is the extra point. Tyler Head and Jack Felcher along with you again. Day 3 of SEC Media Days. Real quick, want to remind you once again about all of our great partners that are allowing us to be out here this week. Certainly do appreciate all of them. I told you about Lawyer Lisa a little bit earlier on. Hang on, I got to find my little list here of everybody that we do have to thank, also including Game Day Men's Health. Game Day Men's Health Columbia offers convenient expert back care for all men looking to feel and perform their best. Call 803-919-7886 to book an appointment today. Hugh Freeze talking yesterday, and as expected, topic of golf did indeed come up. Cut number 46 here, Jen. Hugh Freeze defending his golf game.
You know, I don't. I really hadn't had to defend it. I just, you know, it's something I enjoy doing, but I assure you, it does not take away from my time working to take Auburn back to the top of the college football world.
Okay, Jack, so this has become a thing in the past couple of weeks, and this all stems from the fact that Auburn, depending on what site you're looking at, whether it be On 3 or 24/7 or whatever, is in the 80s in recruiting right now with only a couple months to go to lock in their 26th class, while Alabama and Georgia are snatching up all the blue chip prospects left and right, it seems like. And, you know, the thought is that on August 1st, once you can start guaranteeing these contracts with 26 prospects, then Auburn will get a flood of commitments coming in. But if that doesn't happen, and if they have another bad season, I think we're looking back to the Golfgate, maybe that's what we'll call it, as the beginning of the end for Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, you know, people always want something to blame, you know, for why things aren't going well. And this is an easy target to pinpoint just because it's like, hey, you know, he's focusing on golf, not focusing on the team and stuff and making them better. It doesn't help when you have Lane Kiffin tagging him in tweets about golf, congratulating him and stuff. So it's funny seeing that. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, you're right. You know, you have Alabama, Georgia, teams like that right around you, and in the SEC as well, where they're getting the blue chip prospects. And Auburn, you know, I thought they were doing a decent job at one point, but it's kind of fallen off for them. So we'll see what happens. But again, if this year is not good, the fire that's already burning probably at Auburn a little bit with, you know, people probably being a little sick of Hugh Freeze, it's going to be real hot, and that seat's going to warm up for sure.
And I'll go back to a point that I made a little bit earlier, because you're putting all the eggs in the basket that Jackson Arnold is going to be, the Jackson Arnold that we thought he was going to be in year number 1 as a starter in Oklahoma. And I think we're going to quickly find out, okay, was Jackson Arnold just in a bad situation with not a lot of help around him, or is he truly just not as good as he was built to be coming out of high school?
Yeah, I mean, he is going to be someone that, we mentioned it earlier, I wonder how long the leash is going to be. Because if it gets to a point where he's just not playing well and you're entering SEC play, and I think they get Oklahoma pretty early in SEC play. Is that right?
They do. That is their first game in conference play, and I'm not sure if that one's at home or on the Plains, but I imagine there'll be a lot of smoke around the Jackson Arnold revenge game, if we want to call it that.
Yeah,
and how that goes.
And it's at Oklahoma too, because
even better. I'm sure the Oklahoma fans are going to treat him very well.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a big year for him. I think as we mentioned earlier, it's a make or break season for Jackson Arnold, and if things aren't going well early, I think Auburn's going to be quick to pull the plug on him, even if they've invested a lot of money into him. I don't know how much, but I'm sure they have invested millions into Jackson Arnold. You got to go with Deuce Knight if push comes to shove at that point, because you know the fan base is going to be asking for it if things don't go well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see. And again, Hugh Freeze obviously had a success, you know, a decade ago at Ole Miss when he was doing innovative things on offense that people couldn't quite keep up with. But as we know, we talked about this, I think, last week with Rich Rodriguez going back to West Virginia, the game eventually catches up to you. And yes, it's one thing to have success at a Liberty and stuff like that, but coming back to the SEC and, you know, maybe not having the most talented roster in the world, we're seeing that Hugh Freeze is fighting an uphill battle. And again, if this year doesn't go any better, they may be looking for yet another coach out there on the Plains. They continue to cycle through them seemingly every 3 to 4 years now.
We're going to find out very early if this Auburn team is legit or not. I mean, 3 of their first 5 games come on the road this year. You go to Baylor week 1. You get the 2 non-con cupcake weeks against Ball State and South Alabama, games that you should win easily, but it's the back-to-back weeks of going to Oklahoma and then going to A&M. That's going to be tricky. Not to mention, Georgia comes right after that.
Yeah, and that game this year, I believe, I think that game's in Athens this year, if I'm thinking correctly.
The Georgia game? No, it's
that's
on
right.
It's on the Plains.
It's an odd year. That's right. They are on the Plains, and that could play to their benefit because weird things happen out there at Jordan-Hare Stadium. So we'll see what happens. Jack, got about a minute left. What are you looking forward to hearing from today with the teams that are talking?
Well, Kalen DeBoer and Alabama are up right now, and I'm looking forward to just hearing, I think in general, more of what we heard yesterday. Like, how are these teams going to be? The ones that have quarterbacks, how are those expectations looking for this season? And there's always plenty to talk about. So I'm looking forward to being back in here tomorrow and talking more about day 3 of SEC Media Days.
Well, we'll have actual South Carolina opponents talk about tomorrow with all the teams that are speaking today. So we'll dive into that when that comes around coming up tomorrow. So, Jack, enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll see you then.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
Coming up next, hour number 2 of The Extra Point, I got some guest interviews lined up, including with Yeoman Brown of the College Football Hall of Fame, as well as Gary Stokan of the Peach Bowl. That's all coming up in the next hour, live from Digital Drive here at SEC Media Days on 107.5 The Game. Media Days, day number 3. Elijah Campbell jumping on with me here now as well. We are pleased to be joined from the College Football Hall of Fame, which is where we're broadcasting from. Yaman Brown, who is the Vice President of Marketing, Sales, and Communication. Yaman, thanks for hanging out with us this morning. You told me you're at the All-Star game last night, so a little sleepy today?
No, not a little sleepy. It's par for the course, man. Late night, early morning. I like to fashion myself as an athlete, get it in, and still be present. So, but you guys had me listening to a little nostalgia with Big Time.
Oh yeah.
So that's big time. That'll get me going.
We try and do the music right around here.
No, that was done right.
It sets the tone for every segment.
If I had any fatigue, that beat got me going.
There you go.
I'm ready to rock and roll.
Energy boost. Instantly.
Exactly.
Is this your busiest week of the entire year?
It is not. It's on par, though. Having 4 days and 16 teams come in. And, the beauty of it is it all culminates with the fabulous event for 4 days. But I will just give a huge shout out to the staff behind the scenes, setting up months of planning and everything like that. So working with the SEC team, it is on par for a busy 4 or 5 days. So, yeah, we really enjoy it, man. We wish we could host this event every year.
I think we wish it'd be here every single year. That's a lot easier for us to commute from Columbia.
Yeah.
Because, it's a drive, and flying to Dallas last year had its own share of issues. But you know what?
Then you guys got stranded at the airport coming back.
Oh, boy. I still have mild travel PTSD from having to stay a full night at the Charlotte airport. That's an experience I don't want to do again. But I think one experience I would love to do again is just walk around in this building. This is as somebody who is a diehard college football fan, have been my entire life, I've never had more fun at work than being in this place right here and just getting to see all the cool artifacts. I'm tickled by sitting here next to the 222-0 decal here across the way. I think I meandered my way up to the third floor on the first day on accident, trying to find where we're at right now, just getting lost. And I saw the row of jerseys from the Hall of Fame class from this year, and I might have spent 35 minutes up there and just got lost in my own brain going through it. This is such a cool place for anybody that loves the history of college football.
Our average dwell time for folks coming in the building is about an hour and a half. But when you take the kind of hardened, hardcore fan, they can spend hours in this place and, have a reason to come back. And one of the things that we did as late as August of last year, we became the first museum/attraction to integrate AI into the experience. So when it's not decked out in the full SEC glory, what people will do, they will come in, give us a few data points, take a picture, and it integrates them so it can show your likeness posing with the Heisman Trophy, your likeness posing with the Carolina colors, etc., that team that you choose. And people really enjoy that. And, we kind of fashion ourselves as a place, that kind of operates as a sports entity. But sports just does so much by way of bringing families together and bringing cultures together and alignment. And, man, people just have a blast. And one of the biggest things that we use as a tagline here is the teams you love and the teams you love to hate, right?
Yes.
We love talking smack in the office. Our CEO, is a huge Florida fan. I know that'll go against some of the folks on you guys' channel, but we have a lot of staff members who went to Florida State, and it gets the people going. So SEC just being geographically located in Atlanta, we have a fun time talking smack all day.
Again, talking to Yaman Brown from the College Football Hall of Fame, who is the Vice President of Marketing, Sales, and Communication. Yeah, I can't think of a more perfect and centralized location to have something like this. Again, it's the heart of SEC country, but everything, and you talk about fan bases, when you talk things to the city of Atlanta, you got Florida, you got Georgia, you got Alabama, you got Tennessee, you got Florida State, you got pretty much every major fan base somewhere within the realm of a stone's throw of the city of Atlanta. And again, people come in from all over to come to a place like this. So this truly, I can't think to be a better location for the College Football Hall of Fame. Not to mention the history in Atlanta itself that, again, looking at the 222-0 of Tech beating Cumberland on all those years ago.
I look at it from a perspective of Atlanta is such a melting pot, from folks moving north, south, east, and west. But then also, if you look at the last 7 days in Atlanta, multiple concerts over at the stadium with Beyonce, All-Star game, festivities, SEC championship, different things. the folks who come here from all around, but then the kind of busiest airport in the world, people can get in and out of here. They say about 90% of the country can access Atlanta in 2.5 hours. Like, that's the stat.
Wow.
And it just resonates with us being here in Atlanta. So it bodes well for us.
What's the coolest thing you think you guys have in this museum from in your personal perspective? The coolest thing that exists in this museum as a college football fan, where you see it, you're like, oh, this is awesome.
So I've been asked that question in a variety of ways before, and I will say this. We have over 1 million pieces of artifacts. Like, what you see on display is about 30% of it, right? We have a place, over in, where our administrative offices are, that house everything from pennants to, game, the first dirt from a college football, game, etc. But I would say the biggest thing in this museum, honestly, are the people. It's people who have an affinity for sports. Our historian is a PhD historian. People really love the sport. You guys do what you do because you love the sport, right? Like, and these folks, they work tirelessly. They come to work every day, and they want to put on the best attraction for anybody visiting. So I'd say our strongest asset, are the people here.
Well, and for somebody like myself, I'm from right down the road in Covington, and I came here for the first time back in 2016 just as a fan, getting to tour around, look at artifacts. I have a picture of myself with the Heisman Trophy from all those years ago, and that was long before I ever got into radio. So for me, this is like a full circle moment. Coming here as a fan all those years ago, now getting to come here and work and interact with all the big names in this great sport that we all love so much. So it's kind of, for a lot of people, potentially also a gateway to of getting into the sport, because if you knew nothing about it or the history of it, you come in here and walk away pretty much knowing just about everything, I feel like.
Just behind these doors where folks can't see it, but you talk about this 220 to nothing sticker. Behind there, we have an exhibit that we're running, the kind of intersect between baseball and, football, with the All-Star game being in town. You talk about posing with the Heisman. We change this room over about 3 or 4 times a year to keep it fresh, to get people coming back. This year will mark the 90th anniversary of the Heisman Trophy. So we're going to, and hey, this is breaking for you guys, after this baseball exhibit, we're going to have a crap ton of Heisman trophies in here.
Oh, nice.
And we're really going to have that on display. Where can people go and see the actual Heisman trophies from winners that have come before them? So we really try to keep it innovative. We have over about 50 interactive, pieces. But, just a fan in me, I love seeing the actual memorabilia and the actual trophies, the actual game, worn jerseys. I look at Travis Hunter's jersey, the last Heisman Trophy winner. So we try to, stay inspiring for the next generation. But, us older guys like myself, we like to see, the folks who played when we were around as well. So
that's why I was so tickled when I saw those jerseys up there. I saw Larry Fitzgerald's. I think I stared at it for like 30 minutes. I mean, I was enamored. I was like, that is the coolest thing I've seen here. But in terms of South Carolina stuff, obviously you guys have so many schools represented in this building. And when you walk in, for those who've never been here, there's a helmet wall. And it's, I think, every single school, Division I, Division III, that does a football, has a football program, right?
Division 1 through 3, NIAA. If you have a football program, you are represented. One of the coolest things that I would say, well, I'll give you 2 of the coolest things I think about working here. You see someone who goes to a school who they don't think their school is represented. They come in, and when they, sign in with their information, that helmet illuminates on the helmet wall.
Oh,
and for them to be able to find
awesome.
it, that is just, it just piques that curiosity, and that follows them throughout the museum. But then also, as we look over where our playing field is, you see parents with their kids trying to kick a field goal, and they realize how hard that field goal is. And inevitably, you'll see that mom or dad, like, please don't blow out a hamstring trying to show off for your kids. So we get down and dirty with the fun here as well. So it's good.
Do you know which of those helmets was maybe the hardest to track down out of all the ones on the wall? Because you got a pretty far reach for some of those.
It's one thing being the official, the one and only Hall of Fame. Our guys, our historians, they have a good relationship, and they stay busy around the clock. So they did a lot of planning. A lot of it comes from, our relationship from where we moved, originated in New York, and, being here. But yeah, we tracked down a lot. The only thing I would say is the hard part about the helmet wall is nowadays with the changing jerseys, changing uniforms. You have home, away, road. This helmet. People like, wait, is that our helmet? And so you have to just make sure which version or iteration of the helmet that you have, because some kids they don't know about the ones of yesteryear and the nostalgic helmet and things like that. So that's the interesting take on it as well.
I haven't even looked. What Oregon helmet do you have out there? Because they have one seemingly every quarter. It seems like
every helmet for theirs is a throwback because it's out of style after a year.
It's out of style after a quarter. Like they might. I think Oregon might be one of the first teams that's going to change uniforms at halftime. I predict that.
I wouldn't put it past them. That's
I think
for sure.
we have one from about like 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. Is it the?
It's outdated now.
Yeah, probably is. They like to do the silver duck wings.
The duck wing
on the side.
Yeah,
that's pretty popular. They'll just change the color of it and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm a helmet nerd. I'm like a uniform nerd anyway. So that like checks my box when I come in every morning of just looking at literally half of those I've never seen before from the Division III or NAI levels or whatever. But I love football helmets. That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I made it my mission when I got here. I was like, I want to find my alma maters on here somewhere. I want to find it. And that one actually took about 7 or 8 minutes. It took some looking, but I eventually was able to find it, and I had a little bit of pride in doing so. But for South Carolina fans listening to this right now, too, they're going to be playing here in August for the weekend kickoff on Sunday against Virginia Tech. They want to stop by the College Football Hall of Fame, and they want to find some really cool South Carolina type stuff. What do you think is like one of the coolest South Carolina pieces of memorabilia that you've seen?
One of the things that we do, and I take a lot of pride in, when you walk in where that helmet wall that you're referencing is, we have what's called Game of the Week during the season. So we'll take some of the Virginia Tech, the South Carolina, and we will curate an exhibit just for those huge games.
Oh, that's awesome.
So as soon as you walk in, you're lit up with those special artifacts and things of that nature. Because like I say, we have an artifact, room where millions of pieces of over 1 million pieces of artifacts are. So we'll take that and we'll highlight that for them in addition to what you'll find throughout the museum. So those fan bases will find anything that they're looking for.
And last 2 minutes here for those that are coming in town for that game. What are y'all's hours and days going to be leading up to that game that weekend?
So leading up to that day, we'll be open daily from 10 to 5, and it will really be something where what people need to know that usually don't know. You can come park at our building, and literally between our building and the stadium, we're about 300 yards away.
It's literally right there.
You literally can walk from your experience at the Hall of Fame over to the stadium. So It's strategically placed. So we are between the Georgia Aquarium and the stadium. So people come down, family or, buddies coming to a game, they literally come here, if the game's 12 o'clock or 8 o'clock, they spend a little couple of hours here, enjoy themselves, and then, heck, they go out, Northside Drive, have a little pregame tailgate outside there and go in.
Yes,
so
sir. Perfect.
It's all in walking distance.
Well, Mr. Brown, we got to run into a break here, but thank you so much for hanging out with us, and thank you for allowing us to be out here in this great venue for Media Days.
Place rules.
Cool. And if you guys are welcome back when you want to come back for the game, so let us know.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Here's Yamon Brown, Vice President of Marketing, Sales, and Communication for the College Football Hall of Fame. The next front rolls along up next here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head live from Digital Drive here at SEC Media Days. Again, appreciate you, Mon Brown, from the College Football Hall of Fame for talking to us there a minute ago. Going to have Gary Stokan from the Peach Bowl coming up at 10:30. Obviously, he presides over the playoff game as well as the Aflac kickoff, which South Carolina will be a part of here in just 46 days. They take on Virginia Tech right down the street over at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Really quick, want to remind you about another great partner allowing us to be here in Atlanta for Media Days, that being Lexington Discount Homes. Lexington Discount Homes, one of South Carolina's leading retailers of manufactured homes. Go to LexingtonDiscountHomes.com to find out more. Of course, we've been focusing a lot on what the coaches have had to say and players this week so far at SEC Media Days, but one thing I wanted to get to as well was John McDade, who is the SEC coordinator of officials, speaking yesterday morning to lead things off, noting on a couple of the rule changes and points of emphasis for the SEC in 2025. Again, every conference has their own set of officials, referees, and they do things a little bit differently. There's one uniform set of rules in college football, of course, but certain leagues will emphasize certain things a little bit differently. I think that's ridiculous. I think we should have one uniform set of referees and officials in college football like every other professional sports league has, but that's something that I may not get anytime soon. So I'll go back to wishing on that one. But a couple of things that he did point out that I wanted to note was how they're going to enforce a couple of specific things in reference to manipulation as well as pace of play. And one of the first things that he talked about was a penalty for defensive players when they are attempting to simulate the snap. So you'll see sometimes a linebacker will run up behind the defensive line and start clapping or making noise, trying to simulate the snap on the other side to get a false start out of the offensive line. And we've seen that be penalized before. Officials will now judge defensive flinches or abrupt movements designed to draw offensive linemen offsides a delay of game infraction. So again, if you have a defensive player up there that's clapping or barking or something along those lines, trying to force the offensive line to move, then that will result in a delay of game penalty for that defensive player. And again, that's something that's very direct. It's kind of a yes or no. There is no gray area there. If you see it, you flag it, and we move on from it. So that will discourage that kind of stuff from happening on defense. Speaking of defense, they deemed, or John McDavid deemed, that defensive substitutions must be prompt with an athletic pace. So again, we've seen this in years past where, years ago, the offense could sub and would not allow if the offense kept its personnel on the field, then nobody will be able to sub. But if offense is now sub out, you'll see the officials stand over the ball, wait, hold the offense while the defense runs guys on and off the field. And as probably we could have predicted, teams, defensive coordinators, coaches have started to get to the point where those players start jogging off the field very, very, very slowly. We've seen offenses have to take timeouts and things along those lines as a way of manipulating the game for the defensive side by slowing down, especially the up-tempo offenses that you'll see at places like Tennessee and stuff like that. So now, according to this new point of emphasis, when it comes to defensive substitutions, they need players to be going at what they deem to be an athletic pace. If they determine a defense is substituting too slowly or attempting to delay the game, they will step away from the ball, allowing the offense to go ahead and snap it, potentially catching the defense out of preparation. So now, there's no penalty here essentially, but if the head official that's standing over the ball thinks the defense is moving too slow, he'll just move out of the way and say, offense, have at it. Snap the ball, go ahead. And again, if you're already still trying to run guys on and off the field, obviously as a defense, you'll either not be completely set, you'll have too many men on the field, or you won't have enough guys on the field. So that's something that, again, can hopefully kind of alleviate that kind of thing. Again, that is a judgment call up to the official, though, in terms of how fast or slow the defensive players are substituting after the after the offense is being held there. Another one here, and this is something that's been a big point of conversation in these past couple years. Again, Ole Miss kind of the most frequent offender of this, it seems like, with the fake injuries. God knows how many times we talked about it last year. We saw players falling down, well after, getting set on the field to slow down another team or try and buy some time or something along those lines. Now, this is how it's written. If an injury occurs after the ball is marked and ready for play, the team will now be charged a timeout if a player has a late injury in that process. No timeout remains. There will be a 5-yard delay of game penalty that will be enforced. This rule aims to strike down the feigned injuries that are trying to slow down the up-tempo offenses. I think that does beg the question of, okay, well, what if you pre-plan it and instead of waiting for the ball to get set, you fake an injury beforehand? That's something that certainly could still come into factor here that I'm sure we're going to have to deal with. But at least once the ball is set, you know that the team, that if somebody goes down with an injury, they're either going to be charged out or they will be assessed a 5-yard delay of game penalty. Again, this is something that's tricky, especially when you talk about injuries, because yes, you could have a very legitimate injury occur after the ball is already set, and that kind of opens up a whole nother can of worms. But for now, that's the way the rule is going to be written, and that's how the SEC is going to enforce it going forward. As well, the T-bar sign, again, famous for sparking the debate between, or the beef between Shane Beamer and Brett Bielema at last year's Citrus Bowl, is now going to be the equivalent of fair catch. So, of course, South Carolina attempted to catch Illinois sleeping by doing the T-bar signal on the kickoff and then throwing the lateral and trying to make something happen on that return. That's what Brett Bielema was supposedly upset about for player safety and all those kind of things. But now if you T-bar in the SEC, that will equate to a fair catch. A couple of really small things here. Starting with the third overtime, each team's only going to receive one timeout, and there'll be no further media timeouts beyond the second overtime. This is just done to speed up the pace of play and get these games over quicker. Of course, Georgia and Georgia Tech played 8 overtimes last year, and Kirby smartly, kept using the timeouts every overtime period, which made that game go for super duper long. So they're trying to speed things along here by not having additional timeouts and no further media timeouts past that second overtime. And final one here, the least significant. Officials will no longer say a play stands or confirmed. They will just say it is overturned or upheld. Again, that has no effect on the game itself. That's simply going to be phrasing when it comes to the officials and how they're going to announce these things. So again, now you're up to speed on the rule changes in the SEC for this upcoming year and the points of emphasis for the officiating crews. We're set to be joined by Gary Stokan of the Peach Bowl coming up next. We'll talk about that game and obviously the athletic kickoff that South Carolina Virginia Tech will play in 46 days. It is the Extra Point. It's Arrowhead live from Digital Drive here at SEC Media Days, the College Football Hall of Fame, on your Wednesday on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head broadcasting live from Digital Drive here at SEC Media Days. Elijah Campbell hanging out at the table as well. We are thrilled to be joined by the CEO of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, Gary Stokan, sitting down with us now. Gary,
you guys
first
are
of all,
easily thrilled, huh?
Oh, we are thrilled. Listen,
filled with enthusiasm.
We have been sitting in the College Football Hall of Fame all week long. We're on cloud 9 right now, man. This has been phenomenal.
Well, this is a special place for me. I had the idea to move the Hall of Fame here after I went to the induction ceremonies of the Hall of Fame in South Bend and said, this would be gangbusters in Atlanta. And so I started in 2005 working with Steve Hatchell and Bob Cacciola of the National Football Foundation. And in 2010, I signed a 30-year license and started Atlanta Hall Management, became CEO to move the College Football Hall of Fame here. And where the field is there was a parking lot, and state-owned. And Governor Perdue, who played college football at Georgia as a freshman, helped me go down to Dallas, where National Football Foundation is located. We made a presentation, and they voted 39-1 to move to Atlanta. I think Jerry Jones was the only vote that didn't want to move it to Atlanta, because I think he wanted to move it to Dallas.
I'm a native Georgian. I love the fact that the College Football Hall of Fame's here. I can't even remember what was here before it.
This was the green lot. This was a parking lot.
Okay, all right.
And in 2008, the toughest state budget ever, Governor Perdue put $20 million in the budget to build that parking deck connected to the hall here. So,
awesome.
Yeah, it's been a great. So for this to be here is special for me, to see it be used. We use it for our press day for the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, but see the SEC media here and everybody, and you guys enjoy this. It makes my heart feels good.
Yeah, certainly. And I'm really enjoying the slate that you guys have for the AFLAC kickoff games this year, because a Saturday-Sunday game, which I was informed, first time that you guys have ever done a Saturday-Sunday.
That's right, yeah.
We've had some Saturday Mondays and some other days during the week.
Yeah, we've done Thursday, Saturday. We've done Saturday, Monday. But, Sunday has become a huge opportunity because the NFL doesn't play until the next week. So, and it makes it easier for fans.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk to Ray Tanner, who's a good friend. Ray, hello, Ray. Hopefully you're listening. And hello, Shane Beamer, who's a good friend and two quality guys. You got two of the best people in the world in Columbia with Shane Beamer and Ray Tanner there at South Carolina. But Ray played baseball at NC State when I played basketball at NC State. Good friends, and we've been working for years trying to get South Carolina to get into our Chick-fil-A kickoff game, or now our AFLAC kickoff game, and it finally worked. I'm not a hero in the Beamer family, because Cheryl Beamer and Frank Beamer and I had dinner 2 weeks ago at Lake Oconee, and Cheryl scolded me for having her dad, her husband's team, Virginia Tech, play against her son's team, South Carolina.
Oh, so she's not a fan of the Beamer Bowl.
I asked her what she was going to wear, and she said, well, the Garnet of South Carolina and the Virginia Tech Maroons, but I'm rooting for my son. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Again, Gary Stokan, CEO of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, sitting down with us here. And speaking of that game, and I told Jay I was going to ask this question, I've always been pro home environments, because college football, the home venues, especially for places like South Carolina and Virginia Tech, are truly second to none. What is the benefits and importance of playing these neutral site games, especially in week number 1, like the AFLAC kickoff?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I have about 10 things that I list to the AD and the coach when we talk about coming to play in this game. And, a couple of them are, number one, financially, what a team nets. And SEC and South Carolina net a lot of money for home games, but they can make more money playing in this game, number one. Number two, what I've learned from Frank Beamer and Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney and Kirby Smart is a coach will have his team improve week 1 to week 2 more than any other time during the season. And I said, why is that? And they said, well, we have actual live film. Because in the summer, you're practicing against each other, guys know the plays, etc. Well, if you can play against really good competition in that live film first game, now you can coach your team up week 1 to week 2 individually, because you may be playing against an all-conference or potential NFL player if you play against good competition, and you can coach your team up collectively. The other thing the coaches tell me that their off-season workouts, the players go to a whole new level because they know they're playing on a big stage, national TV, against a big opponent. And that's all players want to do. They want to play against the best competition on the biggest stage. And then, you've got, the opportunity for tickets. We talk to the AD and say, how many tickets do you need? We give them as many as they want to fill Mercedes-Benz. And then the exposure, to play on ABC, national TV, first game of the year. And there's a bunch more, but one of the key ingredients is the CFP. The CFP selection committee uses this game as a data point because as a selection committee, the teams schedule their conference games. You don't have anything to do with that. But in the SEC, in this case, you have 4 games to schedule. And the selection committee looks at that and says, what did you do in those 4 games? Did you schedule cupcakes? You're not going to get many points for that. Did you go out and schedule somebody difficult and you beat them? And I go back to 2017. We had the GOAT game, the greatest opener all time, with number 1 Alabama and number 3 Florida State. Number 1 Alabama beat Florida State. And in a 14 playoff at that time, Alabama did not win the SEC that year. But the committee put them in at number 4 because they beat Florida State in our game. And they went on to win the national championship. So that gives you an example of how important this game has been. And I think lastly, this game has changed the face of college football. In that prior to us doing this 18 years ago with Clemson, Alabama, everybody was scheduling cupcakes and non-directional schools, getting easy wins first couple of games, and then they'd get into their conference schedule. Now you look at this year, you got South Carolina, Virginia Tech, you got Tennessee, Syracuse, you got Notre Dame, Miami, you got Ohio State, Texas, you got Clemson, LSU. I mean, now everybody's playing these big games at the beginning of the season. And it's helped college football. It's helped viewership. It's helped the TV networks. It's helped the fans because, if you don't have a ticket to this game, you can still be at home and watch a great game on TV rather than maybe sit in Columbia in a, 100-degree humidity and temperature and watch a non-directional school game where they're going to win 50-0.
It will be hot on August 31st in Columbia. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, well, we guarantee 72 degrees in Mercedes-Benz
There you go.
Stadium.
Best part of the game, it's indoors. But everything that you laid out, Gary, is 100% true in terms of being the really like the capital game of opening weekend. I think that's why South Carolina fans are so excited to be able to participate in this game and have the eyes of the college football world on them for an afternoon. And you mentioned earlier trying to get South Carolina into this game for a while. When you guys are kind of picking who gets to play in this game, what made South Carolina an attractive option for you all?
Well, South Carolina, number 1, the relationship with Ray Tanner, number 1. Number 2, as Shane came on, that became another ingredient because of our relationship with Shane and the Beamer family. Number 3 is South Carolina fans are tremendous fans. And a lot of them live in Metro Atlanta. And it's an easy drive here. So the accessibility to get here. Number 4, it's worked out to where South Carolina, which we didn't know when we did this, they're top 15 team in the country, and going to be playing potentially for a slot in the playoff, which, South Carolina wants to be in Atlanta 3 times this year. In the Aflac kickoff game against Virginia Tech, in the SEC championship game, and then in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl because we host the semifinal this year of the CFP. So hopefully from my lips to God's ears, right, for all the South Carolina fans.
We only got about 2-ish minutes here left, but you mentioned the Peach Bowl being a part of the college ball playoff and, again, ongoing discussions of what the format's going to look like and all this kind of stuff. And after last year's success of the 12-team format, a lot of people talk about having more home games and how important and how involved are you in those discussions of making sure the Peach Bowl is always going to be a featured part of now the quarter semifinals leading up to the national championship?
Yeah, I think the timing so far is, at least we know the deadline December 1st. The committee, the commissioners and the presidents have to make a decision what the 26 through 31 playoff looks like, whether they stay at 12, whether they go to 14 or 16. Then ESPN is going to negotiate with Chick-fil-A, in our case, the title sponsorship of our game, and then we'll negotiate based on that with Chick-fil-A. And then in parallel, CFP will negotiate with us the 6 CFP bowls to hopefully we've done a good enough job to continue to host quarterfinals and semifinals over that 6-year term.
One more.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have about a minute and a half here or so. Best Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl game that you got to be a part of?
I answer a little differently. People have asked me when I hit my 25th year. This will be my 28th game. My favorite memory, and it wasn't a football play. It was Benji Hollis, our vice president, had his daughter contract leukemia in April, and she went through 6 months of chemo and radiation. And unfortunately, her little heart gave out and she passed away in September in 2018, I believe it was now. And so I wanted to celebrate her life. And so we had Florida and Michigan in our game. And I took Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline song, and I put it, Sweet Anna Charles was her name, Anna Charles. I put Sweet Anna Charles in there. And we put it on the Halo board at Mercedes-Benz Stadium and had the PA announcer announce that we were going to celebrate Anna Charles' life. And I had Benji and his wife and Everly, his little 3-year-old daughter at the time, out on the field. And we played Sweet Caroline to the Sweet Anna Charles. And we had Michigan and Florida people arm in arm swaying, singing the song and crying, and had Benji and his wife and his daughter out there. And that's my favorite memory.
That is awesome. And wow, that's pretty powerful and pretty awesome that you were able to do that for them. And man, we could sit here and talk to you all day long. We do have to run to a break, unfortunately. But thanks so much
business.
for
do some business.
we do. We got to sell ads too. So thanks so much for
you guys.
Absolutely, 46 days. We cannot wait.
46 days. That's right.
Thank
you very much.
He's Gary Stokan, CEO of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Come back, wrap up hour number 2, the Extra Point, up next here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head hanging out here on Digital Drive at SEC Media Days. Wrapping up hour number 2. Again, thank you so much to Gary Stoken, CEO of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl and the Aflac kickoff game that South Carolina will be a part of. I hate that we have to run into commercial breaks sometimes because I think we could have sat here and talked with him all day long. And obviously somebody with tons of stories. Obviously a great relationship with Ray Tanner there, as he alluded to as well. But excited to see South Carolina in that game right down the street, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, coming up in 46 days. One team we've not hit on so far this morning that did speak yesterday was the Tennessee Volunteers. And of course, all the questions and controversy surrounding them this offseason revolves around the quarterback position and what Josh Heupel deemed yesterday as still an open battle.
Yeah, I think it's important. We talk about it, at the beginning of every year. You earn everything in this game, and you certainly do inside of our team room. And that's who you are, your understanding of what we want to be, fundamental technique, scheme. It's how you compete every single day. It's what you're doing off of the field. That's certainly true at the quarterback position. I think it's important, through my career as a player, as a coach, different spots that I've been. I think it's really important that everybody on your team sees that guy earn that job as well. And as you get out on the practice field, their ability to command everything that you're doing on offense, the ability to handle a bad play, reset, the ability to handle a good play, go play the next play, the ability to impact the guys around you in a positive way, run game checks, protections, all the things that go into playing that position. I think it's really important that the guys around them see them earn it. And, through the course of training camp, we don't have a set timeline on when we want to announce somebody as our starter. Once somebody earns that opportunity, then they'll be named that guy.
And of course, the expectation, quite literally up until the day before the spring game, was that Nico Iamaleava was going to go into his second year as a starter, third year in the system there at Tennessee. This upcoming fall as the signal caller, and then he obviously had the situation where he opted to leave when he was not given what he was hoping for from the NIL standpoint. Ends up at UCLA, and they end up essentially trading quarterbacks at that point because Joey Aguilar then ends up, with Tennessee when it's all said and done. And as we've seen, go back a couple years ago, Hendon Hooker was obviously the perfect fit with inside that Josh Heupel offense. And, you certainly I've had the guys like Joe Milton since then that have done fine, but certainly weren't as good of a fit as Hendon Hooker was. And I do wonder how Joey Aguilar is going to fit in there because that is a special type of offense. Not every quarterback can obviously operate. And again, based on what Josh Heupel said right there, it does sound like it's still an open competition between him, Jake Merklinger, and George McIntyre as well as we get set for them to start the season coming up here in right at a month and a half. And look, Tennessee's defense is going to be good. They're good pretty much every single year. They put a lot of guys in the NFL once again this past season, but I do wonder how good that offense is going to be because I think you look at things around them. You lost 4 wide receivers. You lost 4 of your starting offensive linemen. You lost your lead rusher a season ago, so it's a complete reset on offense, including your quarterback. Like that was the thing. You were looking at Nico Iamaleava to be one of your only constants it seemed like returning on that offense. Now he's obviously gone as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how much Tennessee comes back down to earth after seemingly taking a huge step forward last year by making their first ever college football playoff appearance. Of course, they got beaten pretty soundly by Ohio State, but that seemed like the first of many steps in the right direction for them. And I'm interested to see, if this year is a rough year for them because they lost so much and what they thought was going to be their future at quarterback, at least for another season. And Nico, decided to go elsewhere and chase the money at the at the end of the day. So we'll see what happens there. But again, Josh Heupel speaking yesterday for day 2 of SEC Media Days. We'll loop back around to some South Carolina stuff as well as had our latest trivia question coming up next as we dive into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on your Wednesday, live from Digital Drive at SEC Media Days on the Game. 11 o'clock. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head again, live from Digital Drive here at SEC Media Days in Atlanta at the College Football Hall of Fame. Chris Clark back in the studio there in Columbia, hanging out with our guy Ed Bird. I asked Jack earlier, what's the lay of the land? What's the news in Columbia this week? We've been out of the loop here in Atlanta.
You've been out of the loop.
Yeah, out of the loop, man. A lot going on here.
You have you should have all the Gamecock news because they already went this week.
That is very true. Yeah, they were here. They were here on Monday, and that was a very chaotic day for all of us.
Yes, Digital Drive instead of radio.
That's
new, right?
That is new. There's a gigantic sign by the elevator that says Digital Drive, and they really drive home the point that it's not Radio Row and you'll see, obviously we have our radio set up here, but a lot of like YouTube channels and stuff like that are also got tables set up. So it's no longer just traditional terrestrial radio. So I guess we've had to expand our vocabulary a little bit
got
with
the
what we call this.
Yeah, you got digital. Makes sense. No, there's actually, it's interesting, Tyler. I mean, obviously there was more going on there from a South Carolina media standpoint that we've unpacked a little of and maybe we'll continue to do. But here, the players are obviously locked in summer workouts. They restarted this month, earlier this month. But really here it's been a lot of recruiting talk, right? Like this was a significant recruiting month. As we have documented, some of those decisions have not gone South Carolina's way, but there are others, coming this month that are scheduled. There are others that could pop up this month. I mean, just right now, there's 3 recruiting decisions right off the top of my head. One of them's tonight. 4-star offensive tackle Kamari Blair out of Clarksville, Tennessee, which is near Nashville. He'll be announcing his decision tonight at 6 p.m. I believe that's Central Time, so 7 here, between Ole Miss and Tennessee. You've got Samorian Wingo, a 4-star wide receiver out of Florida, who has now moved his decision date up to where he's going to do it on the 17th, so on Thursday. You've also got Landon Duckworth the day after that, 4-star quarterback out of Alabama, South Carolina's top quarterback target in this class. And there's always the potential that some others will pop up. So a lot of recruiting talk, a lot of NIL talk, just because of kind of the landscape of what's going on around college sports right now.
Absolutely. And again, as we talked about yesterday, you want to ideally win a couple of those recruiting battles here in the next couple of days because these past couple have not gone South Carolina's way in the past week or so. And I think for the psyche of people, just seeing somebody put on a South Carolina hat here within the next, hopefully, hours and couple of days, I think would do a lot of people in the fan base probably some good.
They would. It would. And I think, people do need kind of that perception win right now. And I've said this, look, it would have been a lot of fun, and the vibes would be much more immaculate if Carolina had gone through the month of July and, swept or come close to sweeping a lot of their targets, right? Some of these guys that have gone elsewhere that we've talked about, Tamarian Watkins, in-state, Samari Matthews, P.J. Dean, Julian Walker. Like if they would have gotten a lot of these players that they either led for at one time or had a good shot, at least a puncher's chance with, or more than a puncher's chance, in the league group for, people will be riding high right now, right? But there are other targets, including the 3 I just mentioned, where you've got, I think, varying chances, but a chance with all 3 of them. I think Duckworth is the one that, you feel the best about. You feel like the other 2 could possibly go your way. We'll see what happens. They've been close races. But here's really what counts. This is hard to keep in perspective as you go throughout the month of July, particularly when you're seeing some recruiting losses pile up. What matters is who you're signing in December, who you're bringing in January. Nowadays in college football, the bulk of your class is going to be in January. And that's counting, if you have a transfer-heavy class, which South Carolina has typically brought in a pretty decent-sized transfer class. Most of those guys are going to be January enrollees. And it has really trended towards the majority, I think you could say, in some cases. That's been the case in the last few South Carolina classes. The majority of your high school class is now going to look at, graduating high school early in December and enrolling early too. So it's easy to focus on the losses And certainly that's altered maybe the outlook for South Carolina going forward, where people were, I think, dreaming of a top 10 class. Now you're looking at it and maybe adjusting those expectations, but you do have to bear in mind, hey, some of these guys that committed, they were closed races. Do you leave the door open? You kind of forget about some of the quality guys that they already have in this class. You kind of forget about, hey, there's a transfer portal in December. So it's not, I mean, we say this often, it's not about who you miss on, it's who you get. I do think that people are feeling the squeeze a little bit of, okay, a lot of these guys you were kind of counting on are off the board. What now? But there's still a long ways to go. And I think this is going to be a very, very interesting recruiting cycle just because of all the changes and a lot of the uncertainties that are going around the NIL stuff right now.
Yeah, we'll react to those hopeful commitments as they come out here in the next couple of days. Of course, we can't forget about our trivia question. Do you know how many days it is until kickoff today, Chris?
Well, it should be 46, I think, right?
That is correct, 46, and we'll go as current can get. Number 46 on this year's roster, Brian Thomas Jr., who's obviously hung around for several years and getting the opportunity to maybe play one of the most important roles in that defense this year, filling the shoes that Kyle Kennard has left behind. He had 4.5 sacks a season ago. Can you tell me the 5 games, because one of them was half a sack, can you tell me the 5 games where he registered those stats?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, 4.5 sacks in 5 games.
Yes. So you had 4 games with 1 individual sack and then 1 game with half a sack.
Well, let me say one of them was definitely Oklahoma because everybody on the roster had a sack in that game.
Yes. I think Elijah got a sack in the Oklahoma game just because there was that many.
Yes. So Oklahoma was one.
Yep.
Let me go through. Let me. I'm not cheating. I'm not Googling.
Okay. All right.
I do want
You're
to.
Just looking at the schedule.
Am I allowed to visualize the schedule?
You can look at the schedule. Right. You just can't look at his game log.
I won't do that. Don't worry.
All right. I trust you.
Man. Give me Kentucky.
Okay.
Alabama. Oklahoma, we already said. That's 3.
All right.
Vandy and Missouri. Not confident at all.
Okay. So let me see here. You got 3 of the 5. So he had half a sack against Kentucky, 1 against Oklahoma, as you got right, and he got 1 against Vandy. He also had 1 against Wofford. I forgive you for not remembering that one.
Yeah.
And then 1 in the bowl game as well against Illinois. So 4.5 sacks on the season. So you got 3 out of 5, right? I can give you a half point if you want it.
No, I didn't get it right.
No?
Nope.
Okay.
I reject
All
your
or nothing?
point. Your charity.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
All right. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to make this a close race.
You know, I've had a chance to, I would say open up. I've had a chance to catch up against Wes while he's been out, and I'm not making any. I'm not making any headway here.
And he's coming back tomorrow.
I think so.
At least I think he is.
I'm in trouble. I'm going to go study every 45 related statistic that's possible.
Since you're the only one here today, do you have any good 45s that I could possibly pull from for tomorrow?
Not right off the top of my head. 45. Some of our listeners may be like, you idiot. One of the best players in history was number
Gamecock
45.
greats that wore 45 or significant people that wore 45 for South Carolina. What's that? Okay, Jay says Willie Scott. That's one of them.
That's a good one. A Willie Scott question would be good.
I might pull from that.
Which that's there again, we talk about sometimes these interesting numbers like 45, right? Very, very interesting number for Willie Scott.
Jay is second guessing himself now.
Oh, really?
Are you confident that's
no,
right?
I don't know about that. He wore in the pros at least he wore 81. Here's a picture of Willie Scott wearing 47. Yeah.
I'm seeing 47.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would have been yesterday.
Also an interesting number though for I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a Tim Gillespie. That's another option.
Okay. If you ask me a Tim Gillespie question, I won't get it. I'm just going to let you know.
I'll do my research and see if I can come up with something good for that.
Yes.
But I think it's significant that I use Brian Thomas Jr. today because, again, going back to so much uncertainty on this defensive side of football that we talk about pretty much every single day, it seems like he is somebody that is kind of best suited to fill one of those gaps from what a significant contributor like Kyle Kennard left behind a year ago. And look, I'm not going to say he's going to go out there and give you that slam wheel of production, but again, as a rotational guy, he had 4.5 sacks last year. So he could realistically be a guy that could get you 6, maybe 7 this season as a nice compliment to Dylan Stewart, which again would answer that question of, okay, who's on the other side of the line wreaking havoc that could potentially take some of that attention away? Or if the tension's all on Dylan Stewart, that guy can go out there and eat himself.
Yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. is a guy that the staff has kind of considered as like a third starter at times on the defensive line at the edge position. It's kind of funny. You think back last year, the Old Dominion game, Dylan Stewart didn't even start that game. It was JT Gear, and quickly, Dylan Stewart. We saw what he did even in that game, his very first college football game, and kind of how that evolved. And so there could be some evolution this year too, right? With some guys that come along during the season. But with BT, with Brian Thomas Jr., you kind of know what you're getting. He's a guy that's been around a long time. I remember we talked to him for one of our interviews here on the station for the Garnet Trust Hour, and he was talking about how he was really focused on he feels like he's gotten a lot better against the run. This was a guy that when he got his offer from Carolina Tyler in high school, he was about 190 pounds, as an edge. Dad played in the NFL for years for Jets, was an all-pro type player, and he's always had that natural pass rush ability, and that's what we've seen him be really good at. 2023 played more and more down the stretch, started some games in 2023, did some good things. He's started some games for Carolina. This is not a guy that's like Nick Barrett, for instance, who we were talking about yesterday, where he's played more of a bit part, and you're looking for him to step up. Brian Thomas has played a lot of very important snaps. That said, this is certainly his best opportunity to put his stamp on this team, to play his biggest role yet. And so, when we're talking about how are you going to replace Kyle Kennard, probably not. He was the Nagurski winner, But Brian Thomas Jr. is one of those guys where you say, okay, who's up next opposite Dylan Stewart? I think people kind of forget about him a little bit. He does do some really good things for you, especially in the pass rush game.
So, yeah, excited to see him 46 days away from that kickoff game that we talked to Gary Stokin with the Peach Bowl and Aflac kickoff just in the last hour there, which, of course, Carolina will be playing Virginia Tech in just down the street from us here in Atlanta. Yesterday, Kirby Smart said something interesting about the number of first and second year players on the Georgia team this year. And I was curious what that number is for South Carolina as well. I'll dive into that and what it means for the South Carolina team. Coming up next is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along here on your Wednesday on the Game.
All right, everyone, if you are getting hungry, you know where I'm going to recommend already. Our friends over at Firehouse Subs, 15 locations and growing all around the Midlands. So if you're listening to us on the program, no matter where you are in the Midlands, there's going to be a Firehouse Subs closest to you. And that is very comforting. Delicious food, great people, and super easy to order. You can use the Rapid Rescue to go online. You can use firehousesubs.com, but for me, the easiest, most effective way is to use the app. Download the Firehouse Subs app. It's free, of course. You can also register for an account, which is also free. And then when you order your Firehouse Sub, you're going to rack up some points to get yourself some free Firehouse Subs in the future. If you haven't had the new Smokin' Barbecue Triple Stack, they've got it in the classic or the Carolina Gold barbecue sauce, 2 different versions for you for your enjoyment. Get it now while it's still here. The hot sauce bar is also back. firehousesubs.com or download the Firehouse Subs app today.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Saturday live from Digital Drive at SEC Media Days. Of course, Chris Clark back in the studios there in Columbia. Today, we had Kalen DeBoer already take the podium. Jeff Lebby just finished up. Billy Napier coming up at about 1 o'clock. And then rounding out the day is going to be Brent Venables. But yesterday, some of the bigger names in the entire conference up there speaking, including Kirby Smart and Steve Sarkisian. And I don't know if you saw this, Chris, but Kirby Smart said something that I've brought this up several times already in the past day or so that really stood out to me when talking about the roster for this Georgia team this year. 54% of his players this season are either first or second years, which kind of goes against what we typically expect with the Georgia team that's usually very deep and having guys with 3 and 4 years of experience that are typically finding their way on to the field, but it just shows you that everybody is dealing with a depleted depth and having to rely on younger guys across the entire landscape of college football now.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we talk about retention so much. Typically the best teams are going to have a mix. I think we've seen this, in the year 2025. Obviously, we haven't played out this season, but just in the last few years, you're going to see players who are young. You're going to see freshmen out there making big plays, second-year players. You're going to see experience and talent at key spots like quarterback, for instance. And then, you're going to see some transfers sprinkled in, even to, I mean, look back at playoff teams last year. They had key transfers, sprinkled throughout that roster. So, it is roster management is a very difficult aspect now. It's much harder than it was. In one way, you can use the transfer portal to supplement your roster where you've got some holes. Whereas, you'd have to think about, hey, we got to play a freshman here. Or we're not quite sure. The flip side of that, of course, is that you can also lose players to the transfer portal, and nobody has been immune to that. I think Georgia's one of those programs, Tyler, and you follow them closely. I think you know this and can speak to it. For a while, in the earlier days of NIL, they seemed to have a little bit of immunity from. They weren't losing as many guys, but now even they've started to have some. Why is that guy leaving? Head scratching types of things. So definitely a challenge. I do think. First of all, if you're playing a lot of young players, you got to recruit great talent that's ready. And Georgia's typically going to do that, right? They're going to be in the top 5, top 10 recruiting every single year. But also which positions, are you relying on? Are you relying on a freshman quarterback? They're not, but they're also relying on a guy in Gunnar Stockton. They're one of many teams who comes in this season breaking in a new quarterback where there's at least an element of, even though the guy's been around a while, unknown, right? Like, how's this guy going to perform throughout the course of an entire year? And we all know how important the quarterback position is.
Do you want to take a guess at how much of South Carolina's roster is made up of first or second year guys?
I would say first or second year, probably about 40 to 50%. Let's go with 47%.
You are pretty darn close. According to my math, 45% of South Carolina's roster. So
that
right
would have
there
been
in the
a
middle.
great trivia question for tomorrow.
That would have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dang. I didn't even think about that. That's really good. But obviously it ties in the conversation of what Kirby Smart was, talking about yesterday. And again, just because you're a first, second year guy in that number doesn't mean you're somebody that's going to be relied on or be asked to do a whole lot this year. But I'm looking at South Carolina's roster. And again, you have Mazio Bennett, who is a true sophomore. You have Dylan Stewart, who's also a true sophomore, Josiah Thompson, guys like that are going in their second year with the program, that are J.R. Johnson as well, that are expected to do a whole lot and be and play key roles on this team despite having less than 2 years of experience.
Well, and you've got, the first two guys that you mentioned there, one of them is absolutely one of South Carolina's best players. I would probably put Thompson in that mold as well. He was a true freshman last year playing left tackle in the SEC. So you certainly take your lumps, but he's a guy that if you talk to people around the program, if you talk to people nationally, there's a lot of buzz for just how good ultimately Josiah Thompson could be. And I think people are expecting him to take that next step. Dylan Stewart, that's the exciting thing about him. He could take the next step, but he was already one of the best players, not just on this team, but typically on the field as a true freshman last year. And so that's kind of the difference, right? It's how many sophomores are you playing that are ready to play and that are ready to be impact guys versus how many guys do you think will make a big impact? J.R. Johnson's actually a great example of that, Tyler. Here's a guy that looks like $1 million off the bus and played in every game last year, but mostly on special teams, is 6'4", 240. Looks like a defensive end playing linebacker, former high school wide receiver. Very exciting player. At the same time, you just don't know, right, until you get out there and play the game. So Mazio Bennett's a guy played a big role as a freshman. So some of these guys that played significant roles as true freshmen are going to be better for it going into year two. And I think if you look at South Carolina's roster, they're going to play all those guys that we just mentioned. They're also going to play some freshmen. We talk about the 6-man wide receiver class. not all 6 are going to play key roles, especially with some
Mm.
upperclassmen and, a guy like Bennett, who's a sophomore, but then you've got, Nick Carber, you got Jared Brown. We
Sure.
very much expect some freshmen are going to play roles on this team. We've also brought in some portal guys who have ample experience at tight end, on the offensive line, at defensive tackle. Your running back room, if Faison's cleared, the arguably top 2 guys there are going to be one of the older duos in the country.
Sure.
And then you
sure.
got a quarterback who has, who's in year 3 and is in his second year as a starter. So I think the key is just having a good balance. Like I said, even the top teams across the country are going to play transfers and they're going to play young players. But I do think what you brought up, Kirby's point there, it just illustrates that a lot of teams are coming in year after year with pretty significant turnover. And that's why if you can retain the key part of your roster in the NIL era, you're going to position yourself better than some others.
Well, and Shane's not been shy about it. Talked about it going last year, and I think he mentioned it maybe yesterday as well. The anticipation that pretty much every single year you're going to have to start or play significant time for some of these younger guys. And while there can be some growing pains, like we saw Josiah Thompson a year ago, that's how you end up in a situation like you did last year, specifically with your defense, namely the defensive line, where you have guys that just have tons and tons of football experience as third or fourth year guys that end up being a catalyst to why your defense as a whole was so good last year.
Yes. That was absolutely for South Carolina last year. We talked about it a ton, and Shane Beamer's talked about that, as you just mentioned, Tyler. Like, he had a more than a strong feeling that, hey, we're going to be a lot better than people think because of what you have coming back. Kyle Kennard playing, his 5th year of ball. Demetrius Knight, same thing. Like, look at that linebacker room, all the seniors that they had, all the upperclassmen that they had in the defensive tackle room, the experience in the secondary. Those things do matter, and so I think, frankly, that's one reason that Clemson's getting a lot of buzz this year, is because they did a great job of retaining talent, some of it younger, some of it veteran, and South Carolina too. Pete Nakos from On3, I mentioned this yesterday. He spoke to a source about NIL who said that South Carolina did the best job in the country with roster retention. Quite frankly, their rival Clemson is probably up there too. And I think that's why, these teams have some buzz. You almost look past some of maybe the holes that they have, because if you're bringing back your best players that you've started to develop in your program or that you've been developing, you're going to have a chance. It was a key for South Carolina last year. It'll be different this time around.
Sure.
You came into this cycle not retaining, hey, we need to bring back a bunch of guys for their 4th or 5th year. It was, frankly, younger players, a Sellers, a Stewart, and then having some other guys that are veterans, like a Nick Barrett, for instance, a Monkel Goodwine, having those guys step up too.
Obviously, and again, excited to see all these guys take the field coming up here in just 46 days. Reminder again about all our great partners allowing us to be out here, including Lawyer Lisa. Need to talk estate planning, elder law, elder care, or probate. Call Lawyer Lisa at 803-563-5163. Go to lawyerlisa.com. We'll take a look at some quarterbacks around the SEC that have been speaking so far at Media Days this week as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along on your Wednesday on the game. You get that cut here. Let me know if it plays. All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head here at Digital Drive at SC Media Days. Chris Clark back in the studios there in Columbia. Of course, a lot of teams talking this week, and always the conversation is going to revolve to some degree around the quarterbacks that are speaking. Ed Bird, let's see if we can get that thing to try one more time here, because I did want to get to cut number 43 from yesterday of what Jackson Arnold had to say when tasked with the question on the SEC Network about what exactly went wrong at Oklahoma a season ago. We got that one working there, Ed?
I mean, for whatever reason, I just didn't play good. Things happen. Things happen for a reason.
Yeah. I think that's the best part about the transfer portal is quarterbacks getting opportunities to go elsewhere, maybe in a better fit, maybe a fresh start. But I 100% agree that sometimes things don't work out, but it's the best thing, and you got a new opportunity.
Yeah, sometimes things don't work out the way it's supposed to be. We're on God's timing, not our timing. And for me, I felt the best decision for me was just to move on and move on somewhere else and get a fresh start, like you said, and go out and do what I know I can do with this Auburn squad this year.
So, Chris, he takes accountability. I still don't necessarily know for sure if it was more on him or just more on how abysmal that offense was. Didn't have a good line, didn't have good receivers, didn't really have any help around him. We saw the same thing with Michael Hawkins Jr. when he came in and played, and obviously that was the starter when South Carolina rolled into town and smashed them, pretty easily a season ago. All that being said, Auburn, going back to Hugh Freeze talking yesterday, they are truly putting all the eggs in the Jackson Arnold is still a really, really good quarterback basket. And Jack and I discussed this a little bit earlier. You have to wonder how long that leash is going to be, because they still also have a 5-star Deuce Knight waiting in the wings in case Jackson Arnold doesn't work out. And again, you don't really have any margin for error to let him keep going out there if he's not winning, because Hugh Freeze's job could potentially be on the line.
Yeah, I don't think we can make a judgment just yet on Jackson Arnold playing in that offense. I mean, we saw what South Carolina did to them. Now, South Carolina obviously had a quite formidable defensive line and defensive front. But, I mean, they embarrassed Oklahoma. I do think it would have helped, and here's another reason why you don't put it as much on Jackson Arnold. Their offensive line wasn't as good, but it also appeared that a key part of the Oklahoma strategy during that game was to try to block Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart with a tight end for some reason, including on the first play of the game. So that didn't work out too well, and they didn't seem to adjust, and that's why they have, frankly, an offensive coordinator change at Oklahoma too, and be fascinating, by the way, to see how that works out. But, you get a guy who has a fresh start. Jackson Arnold was a big-time recruit. I mean, he was a 5-star guy. He was top 10 nationally. It was a strong quarterback class. He was in the same class as Arch Manning, Dante Moore at UCLA, and Nico. So he was right behind those guys at number 4, right? So,
Yep.
I mean, a big-time recruit with talent. The other thing what you mentioned about Auburn is also fascinating to me. They're under a lot of pressure. For those who don't know, and I think everybody who follows SEC college football knows, Auburn's a weird place.
Yes, very weird.
If they go out there week 1 and lose to Baylor at Waco,
that's a tricky one.
That's a tricky, and not that this is not a slight against Baylor. I'm just saying it's not going and playing, the Iron Bowl in week 1 or something like that. The calls are going to intensify.
Sure.
The Hugh Freeze plays too much golf is going to intensify, and they'll run people off. I mean, they'll turn on you in a hurry. You also look at, even after that game, they got Ball State, South Alabama next, right? They should be able to survive those. Their September 20th to October 18th slate is at Oklahoma, which will be fascinating, at A&M, host Georgia, and then host Missouri. Then you got to go to Arkansas, right? So you have a challenging, frankly, first, 7, 8 games that if it goes sideways, it's going to get bad. And man, Hugh Freeze took a lot of flack last year for throwing his quarterback under the bus. There's nothing wrong with my offense. Everything's good. I'm a genius. We just need better quarterback play. This year, there seems to be no excuses there because they have Arnold as a transfer who's talented. They got, like you said, Deuce Knight waiting in the wings. They have some options there.
Absolutely. And again, it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. One quarterback we are a little bit more sure of is Diego Pavia, who came in and spoke on Monday. I wanted to get this clip in here real quick. Cut number 47 from yesterday's list here, Ed Bird, of Diego Pavia, the confidence and the expectations he has for Vanderbilt in his second year as their starter.
I got to finish something that I started, going 7-6 wasn't good enough. And I want the national championship. And so to be back here, one last dance it's going to be awesome.
So yesterday, Chris, I brought up the point of, sellers being asked about, the $4 million deal at Auburn and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like there's a perception for a lot of people outside of Columbia that Carolina shouldn't have a quarterback that good because they just don't have a history of having those kind of guys. And I think the same thing can be said about a Vanderbilt quarterback talking with that much confidence, right? If literally any other school's quarterback says, yeah, our goal is national championship this year, we said, okay, that's kind of what everybody should say, right? But when a Vanderbilt player or Vanderbilt quarterback says that, you're like, oh, hey, buddy, you forget what school you're at, right? Like you have no business talking like that because you're a Vanderbilt. But Diego Pavia, very confident guy, and obviously has a very strong track record of play up to this point in the SEC. That not that I'm believing they're going to be that kind of team, but I think they're going to be a tough team to deal with. As we talked about when they come into Willie B in September this year.
You don't think Jay Cutler or Jordan Rogers were? Almost said Jordan Palmer. Jordan Rogers were promising national championships when they were at Vandy.
Jay Cutler probably couldn't be bothered to even come to media days back when he was at Vanderbilt. He just showed up, played football, and then went home. He's somebody that doesn't like to do too much extra.
Had a light on the sideline. I do miss the smoking Jay Cutler memes.
I do too. Those were funny. But yeah, the Diego Pavia is just outside of the mold of what we expect. Like Elijah and I were talking about earlier, Pat Robinette, a former quarterback at Vanderbilt who went on to be a doctor. I'm like, yeah, that's what a Vanderbilt quarterback is supposed to be, a guy that just plays football on the side while he's getting his master's or doctorate in the process, not a Diego Pavia.
Well, and he's changed the equation for him, right? I mean, they were obviously a very tough out last year, and not just a tough out. I mean, they got Bama, almost got Texas. So, they're a fascinating team because I think we don't know as much about Vanderbilt this year aside from Pavia, just because, frankly, no disrespect. I mean, we like to make fun of Vandy here a little bit, but we just don't know as much about them because we don't pay as much attention to them, but we should. And, we know Pavia doesn't lack for confidence. Neither does Clark Lee. I mean, the coach and the quarterback in different ways have both not been shy to talk about, hey, national championship for Vandy. They're probably sitting there thinking, hey, we were pretty close last year. Actually, what if we could have beat South Carolina in a game that was pretty darn competitive for most of the game? What if we could have beat Texas? Like, they're probably thinking they're not as far off, while the public perception is, it's just Vandy. But Pavia is a dynamic player, and we know that when you have a quarterback like that, you're going to have a really good chance. But heck, man, there's a lot of really good quarterbacks in this league this year is the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Sonoran Sellers is one of those quarterbacks. Still got to figure out what exactly his nickname should be, the nickname of sorts, which we'll debate as we wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Up next, live from Digital Drive at SC Media Days here on The Game.
Look, Diego, we don't talk about self-preservation, but we need to build ways in our system that do protect him. And I see that more as establishing a run game through the tailback. You know, we need him to take over the game at some point, and the way he plays is the way he plays. We can build around him to protect him a little bit and not give him the option to pull the ball. If we can do a better job of moving people at the point of attack in our offensive line. We believe in our running backs. I think we have a good group of running backs that can become some of the best in the conference. But you know, there's no productive conversation that comes, and really, there's no winning conversation that comes between me and Diego where I'm talking about, you know, taking care of himself in the competitive moment. He needs to play to his personality. We will protect him.
That was Clark Lee, head coach of the Vanderbilt Commodores, talking the other day about Diego Pavia, who we just spent the end of that last segment talking about. And again, that's going to be a big matchup for South Carolina when the Commodores do roll in town coming up in September. I wanted to get to this before we get out of here for today, Chris. Cut number 45 from today's list, Ed, if you could. Lenore Sellers featured on the SEC Network the other day. I saw this clip making the rounds yesterday of what exactly his nickname should be. And here's what Lenore Sellers had to say.
Anything with LA in front of it, like any word you want to put behind LA, that's what people do. It's the goggles.
Have you seen the Heisman?
Yeah, I have. It's a cool one too.
Any others?
What's the super califragilistic thing? I've seen that, like, love that. I've seen the Heisman. I've seen, for Media Day, I've seen, like, La Pilot, La Flight, La Media Day, all this stuff. So.
All right, Chris, what nickname do we need to decide on for Lenore Sellers?
I did the thing, Tyler, where that people do nowadays where you're trying to get some help with some ideas and you're running low on brain power. You put it into AI.
Yes,
to ask.
Of course.
And so you kind of, you kind of give a description, right? This is because, you know, Claude or our friend Chat, they don't really, they know a little bit about Lenore Sellers, but they're not super knowledgeable. They don't watch SEC football every Saturday.
Sure.
They might soon, but not right now. So you kind of try to tell them about it, and they like lean in super hard. You're like, all right, this is a real like chill, laid back guy. And so they come back with, oh, la chill, la cool. And you're like, no, these are not good.
Yeah, it doesn't quite roll off the tongue.
I like I think the La Heisman nickname is really cool, you know, as kind of a campaign, you know.
Sure.
And that one, I think, you know, if he starts out the year hot, South Carolina starts out the year hot, you got to have a good team. Of course, you got to be doing some great things to get Heisman buzz in addition to what you do individually. I think that's the one that could really like take off depending on how things go in the early part.
I did my hit with my guys in Athens yesterday, and they're calling him Latibo, which, I mean, I guess that's kind of in the same vein because, you know, Tebow did end up winning the Heisman, but it is funny that you can, I guess, kind of make anything fit after the law, and it sounds pretty decent as far as nicknames go.
Some of the AI ones, though, Tyler, they're just
no.
I
feel like maybe I saw this somewhere, but I don't think I've come across La Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
That was a new one for
which
me.
is what he was trying to pronounce there. I guess in reference to the magical plays that he was making a year ago, like La Magic would suffice.
La Magic, La Smooth, La Zen is one.
La Zen, yeah, that's true.
It's like,
by the way, when he sat down with us on Monday, I did tell him that I call the Clemson touchdown third and Sellers, and he said he did like that. So I'm hoping that really sticks.
I mean, I know some people who watch that play like every day.
Yeah,
pretty.
I mean, hey, you want something that's gonna fire you up and get you going. I mean, there you go. Who needs coffee when you have Lenore Sellers running all over Clemson's defense?
You set it to that's like your alarm in the morning. If you can do that, you just set a YouTube video, put the audio on of the touchdown.
That or just Todd Ellis and Tommy Suggs' call of it as they're losing their minds. Like, yeah, that'll wake you up.
Yeah. No, I just think, I mean, Lenoris is so funny with all that stuff because he just, what do you think? Oh, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I like that one. That one's kind of funny. He just doesn't get
Yeah.
really.
He's just, I mean, he is la chill, la cool, or whatever, AI was trying to help you out with. Like, that's who he is, man. He's not high, he's not low. And again, we tease him about that for the purposes of being in front of, cameras and microphones. But man, you see that translate on the field. There's nothing that really rattles the guy, and no moment's obviously too big for him. And we hope to see many more of those plays this upcoming season that we're talking about for years and years to come. That we also have to give names too. Like, great plays have names, and I think Third and Sellers was fitting for Clemson last year, and hopefully there's more of those type of plays coming this year.
Yeah, pretty unflappable guy, on and off the field. Just, I mean, I've been saying this. I think every good quarterback that comes out of Carolina from here on out, people will start comparing him to Sellers, and he's just one of those guys you're not going to be able to compare guys to. He just, a guy like him, frankly, just doesn't come around very often. So I know people enjoyed watching him last year. Definitely need to enjoy him this year too, in case it's the last go round, because he's certainly, I think, going to have an opportunity.
Absolutely. And again, 46 days away from kicking off against Virginia Tech in Atlanta. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show, myself, Bill Gunter, up next as Media Days rolls on here on the game.